Hello, crypto world! Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So this is going to be an XRP video. Now, I wasn't planning on doing an XRP video, but man, you can see what's going on in crypto in general today. It's just a bloodbath. Like, look at this nasty decline that has been taking place. So in my previous videos, I talked about how we have three different structures in the XRP bull run structure. The first one, price moves up out of the sideways range bound time. It has pullbacks along the way, but eventually you get to one where it's a real big pullback compared to anything else that came before it. And then it goes into a consolidation. This is a typical consolidation that you might see in a bull run structure. It moves up out of that into the second corrective structure, and this corrective structure has two parts to it. It has the first part, and then it moves up and does the second part. And then finally, it moves up out of this second corrective structure and goes into the third corrective structure. These corrective structures can be different sizes. There's no rule that says the third corrective structure needs to be the biggest. It could be the first one. It hasn't been the second one, but eventually, probably someday it will. Okay, so after it gets above this third corrective structure, it typically moves up to the peak. Now, in my last XRP video, I did not bring up the possibility that this was the peak. And the reason why is we have some instances, such as back in this December 2014 bull run structure. This is another XRP bull run structure. Again, this one has the third corrective structure that's the largest compared to the other two. There are two parts to this one. This one's really small, but they all conform to the rules that these structures abide by. Notice that there are these flat areas. So it was my belief that we were likely in something like this. Now, the reason why that's important is because XRP has a repetitive structure that moves up to the peak. And that repetitive structure includes 7 different moves you can count. So once it gets above this third corrective structure, and this is very important, is going vertical, you can start counting 7 moves. And it needs to be on a small time frame. So I'll show you. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 brings it to the peak. We don't count these parts where it goes flat. We wait till after those parts complete, then we start it. If we went to the next bull run that takes place after this 2014 bull run structure, is this May 2017 bull run structure, we see the same concept. So here is, well, this one's really an interesting one to begin with. So there is the bull run structure. Actually, it comes out of the sideways range bound time, and all these red circled areas, it's actually a miniature bull run structure moving up into the first corrective structure. Aside from that, it has the first corrective structure, it moves up, has the two parts to the second corrective structure, it moves up into the third corrective structure, and once it moves out of that third corrective structure, we have, once again, another area where it goes flat. We don't really count it, but once it starts going vertical, we do count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's this little tiny shooting star right here. Let's count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 brings it to the peak. So it has been my belief that we have been doing something like this. Okay, so here we are on today's XRP bull run structure. If you count the moves, once it gets above this high of the third corrective structure, you can actually count 7 moves. So let's zoom in, starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Since this one is all in the shadow of this right here, we just count it as 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 brings it to the peak. So that would make an argument that this is potentially a peak structure. I'm going to throw out the case why I believe this could potentially be the peak. I'll also throw out why I believe that this may not be the peak. So we have the 7 moves that brings it to the peak. Let's examine what a peak structure looks like. So this was the last bull run structure that took place in April 2021. So price moves up. There's 7 moves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 brings it to the peak. It then has a initial decline from that peak, and then there's these 2 smaller peaks. This is what a peak structure looks like. After that, it moves down and it goes into the declining structure. This is composed of multiple structures. That is something that we will get into once we're there. We're not there yet. So this is 2021. Let's go back and examine the one that came before this. Okay, so here we are at the bull run structure that came before this one. Now, it comes to a peak in January 2018. It has its initial decline. Well, let's first count the moves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 brings it to the peak. So as soon as it gets out of the gate, we start counting with this small little move and move down right here. So once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it pulls back from that initial peak. Here, those 2 smaller peaks are a little hard to see. We have the first one. It moves up here. It's kind of a candle that shoots up, comes back down, does it again. So this makes up the 2 smaller peak structures, or smaller peaks within the greater peak structure. So this is January 2018. After this, it goes into the declining structure. In this case, it moved up quite a bit. This move up goes back into the peak structure. The one in 2021, this one, this move up, it moves up again and goes back into this peak structure. So here we are back on the January 2018. Let's go to the one that took place before this one. So this is the one that took place in May 2017. So it comes to a peak. We already counted this. It does the initial decline, and then it has the 2 smaller peaks. Here we have a nice separation of the peaks. We have the initial peak and then the 2 smaller ones. This first beginning declining structure moves back up into this peak structure. Of course, none of these declining structures right here does it ever really go very high into this peak structure. Let's examine the peak structure that came before this one. That was this one in 2014, December 2014. So we already counted these moves. Goes to the peak, has the initial pullback. This one is a very clean looking peak structure. We have the 2 smaller peaks that come after this large peak, and then we have the declining structure. This declining structure moves up a little bit into the range of this peak structure. Let's go to the very first one. That's the only one left. So this is the very first XRP bull run structure. This takes place in December 2013. There are 7 moves you can count. You have to be on a 5-minute candle. I'm on a 1-hour candle, so you can't see them in this one. In some of my previous videos, I go into this on a 5-minute candle, and you can see the counts, the 7 moves to the peak. This one is unique, and this is always a potential possibility, even though I would say it's a lower probability of something like this happening just because it's only happened once. So this one has 2 main peaks, and believe it or not, the second peak is just a tad bit higher than the first peak. After this second peak, you have the 2 smaller peaks, and then it goes into the declining structure. In this one, it doesn't even, this first fractal in the declining structure doesn't even make it into this peak structure. So let's jump back to where we are today. Okay, so here we are on today's chart. And by the way, I have been on CoinTrader Pro the whole time. And the reason why is because I can go back to these other bull run structures on a 1-hour time frame. I can't do that on TradingView. So we have, believe it or not, 7 moves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It declines. This is where it gets a little tricky. So you can make an argument that this is the first smaller peak and this is the second. Honestly, I have issues with that. It's so sloppy. If we go back to the January 2018 peak, We have another example of a sloppy two peaks, or at least the first peak is kind of sloppy. But even this one, let's zoom in a little, is, I would say, prettier than what we see on today's chart. So in my mind, the sloppiness kind of lends to the argument that this is not a peak structure and is more, if anything, just a large iteration of this at play, which is what I thought it was in my last video, or this version. So this is May 2017, and this is December 2014. So it could be something like this at play. It does dip down into this third corrective structure, which today's chart has done that too. So that sloppy two smaller peaks is, in my mind at least, an argument for the concept that this is just maybe a bull flag or these flat areas at play. And this takes place before the move up to the peak. Okay, I'm going to poke holes in the 7 moves to the peak now. So 100% of the time, you need to understand this, 100% of the time, there has always been 7 moves to the peak. I don't expect that to change. To think that's going to change is not based in reality. However, you can count, for instance, these moves. Let's zoom in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, over here on CoinTrader Pro, this peak is lower than this one. But if we jump over to TradingView, it's actually this one that's the highest one. So let's count it on TradingView. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. 7 would bring you to the peak. So that is interesting. So here we are back on CoinTrader Pro. So I could say that, well, it did it here. Maybe it can do it here, and this also not be the peak. And if we were to step back and look at the big picture, peak barely gets above this peak. Come on, come on. What kind of bull run is that? So to me, that's another argument saying that it barely gets above the all-time high, and that's the peak. It's possible, but I just find it a little hard to believe. Here we are back on CoinTrader Pro. So those are the arguments that this could potentially just be a pullback or a flat area before we start moving up into those 7 moves to the peak, or if you will, a bull flag where it's pulling back down deep in the same way that maybe this pulled back down low, or this right here pulls back down low. This is just doing it on a much larger scale. So that is a possibility. However, I will not ignore the fact that we have 7 moves and that you can still make out to smaller peaks here. That is going to continue to haunt me. I can't say for certain that this is the peak, but it is playing out quite large. You do have a sloppy potential first peak, or it could play out on a larger scale. This is the first peak. We're doing the first smaller peak. We'll do another one, and then we go into the decline. There's always that possibility as well. And then there's the whole other argument, the relation between XRP and Bitcoin. XRP has tended to peak out, and Bitcoin has peaked out. Compared this fractal, which is the 2017/2018 fractal, the peak and the early part of the decline, back in 2017/18, XRP peaked during this time. Let's go back and look at that. Okay, so here we are back in 2017/18. This is that peak that I am talking about. So I have copied this fractal onto today's chart. This down here is what XRP was doing. So as you can see, It is during this same time frame that we are potentially copying, even though Bitcoin on today's chart actually made a higher high. It was just a small little shooting star wick of a candle that made it above this high, but it still made it above that high. However, it is following this basic idea so far, and it is during this peak that XRP peaks. So that's an argument saying that we could potentially be repeating what took place here, sort of at least, on today's chart. Bitcoin actually peaked right here. XRP peaks right here. Close enough. So there's that that you should be aware of. So where do I stand in all this? Here we are back on CoinTrader Pro. So at the moment, I'm 50-50. I think the sloppiness of this makes me question whether this is the peak. The 7 moves, we have it over here, so maybe it's happening again, and it's still going to move up. But the other stuff I pointed out to you, those are serious things that we should be aware of. So if this is going into that declining structure, we can see a pullback, but it's maybe going to go part way. I don't know how high up it will go. What we want to see, if this is not the peak, we want to see a robust movement out of here. We want to see it move up, maybe, sure, have a little consolidation here, but then move up and make higher highs. We don't want to see it kind of stall out and start doing something like this. That would be concerning. Or even like this, basically doing the second peak over here. We want to see robust action take place. We don't want to see it hanging around here for very long. We want to see it make higher highs. So that is what I am looking for. If I don't see that, I am going to assume that this is the peak. So that's the way I see it. I hope this video was helpful. I am on peak watch right now. I'm looking for further signs that this is the peak. I hope it's not. I hope it moves out and starts to make higher highs. If it is, we should see that take place soon. If it's the peak, beware. We have no guarantee that it's going to go to whatever special price you have in mind. I have special prices in mind, but this may be the reality. And if it is, you want to be aware of it. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful. If you found it helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. But if you did enjoy this video and you would like to see further videos like this, and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. And if you would like to be part of my Discord, I have a Patreon, and connected to that Patreon is a Discord where I'm very active on there. We have lots of great discussions around XRP and other cryptos. You're welcome to join. It's a $5 a month subscription. I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.